Alright guys, I am back yet again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Deer Days on Nintendo Switch. This time I got version 1 of my Stoicheia Grave Zorga deck. So, as always, version 1, everything will be first additional card pass through D Booster Set 7. And as you can see, this is the second different Zorga build that I have done based on his new form that was introduced in one of the early festival boosters. So I already have a video up based around his original form, another variant of the deck, so you can go check that out if you want to. But this version of the deck is definitely the stronger of the two, definitely a lot more consistent, less likely to brick than the other form. But it does play very similarly to the last form of Zorga, still based around his unique ability to use Alchemagic and combine the effects of two different orders in one turn. So, as always, we will be going through the deck, and I'll show it off in one card fight for you to see it in action. So, starting first with the ride deck, it is the same as the last build, except for the grade 3, obviously. So, our grade 0 starter is Dream Nibbling. So, it's rolled upon. If you win second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter. Next, for the grade 1. We have Rancor Chain. So his activate ability, once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw 2 cards, choose up to 1 order card from your hand, discard it, and if you did not discard, choose 2 cards from your hand and discard them. So pretty good draw ability, Soul Blast 1 for a +1, and then you drop an order from your hand, setting up an order in your drop for you to use later. And then he also has his continuous ability when he's on Rearguard Circle. That says if you played an order this turn, this unit gets power plus 2,000. So, again, we do have quite a few drop zone recursion skills in this deck. So if you revive him from your drop and he ends up on your Rearguard Circle, he will have a 10k base. So that does come into play sometimes. Next for the grade 2. We have Black Tears Husk Dragon. So his auto ability, when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, you choose up to 1 normal order from your drop and put it into your hand. So it lets you recycle an order from your drop, either one you discarded in order to ride, or one that you discarded off of Rancor Chain's ability. So gets that card back into your hand, effectively a free +1. And then he also has his continuous ability on Rearguard Circle that says if you played an order this turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000. So again, if he ends up on Rearguard Circle, he's a 15k base. So pretty good, although most of the time we have better things to put in our front row than him. So doesn't come into play as often as Rancor Chain's power-up ability, but if you do need it, it is nice to have that extra 5k. So then for our grade 3, we have Dead Sea Spiritualist Grave Zorga. So he has a continuous ability that says if you did Alchemagic this turn, all of your front row units get power plus 5,000. So a built-in power-up skill, very nice, since Grief, Despair, and Rejection is name-locked to the original Zorga. We cannot use that order in this deck, which was one of the main ways we powered up our units in the other variant of the deck. So with this unit having a built-in power-up skill, it does help mitigate that some. Grief, Despair, and Rejection, of course, gave 3 of your units 10k, and this only gives 5k. But having it without having to dedicate any of your order slots to it, and also having it just be a passive Vanguard ability without the need to have your field set up already, does actually make this superior in a lot of ways. And then he has his activate ability that says once per turn, you can Soul Blast 1 and discard a card from your hand to choose a normal order from your drop, put it into your hand, and until end of turn, when you would play a normal order, you can bind a normal order with a different card name from your drop and Alchemagic. So that is this card's Alchemagic ability, letting you combine the effects of 2 of your orders. Again, briefly, how that works is you play an order from hand and then bind a second one with a different name from your drop. You combine the costs, so you pay the cost of both orders up front, and you add the text of the bound order to the end of the order from your hand and resolve them in that order. So you get the effects of 2 different orders in one turn. Now this one is a bit more consistent than the original form of Zorga, since it allows you to discard any card from your hand and add a normal order from your drop back to your hand. So you are guaranteed to have an order in your hand every turn in order to be able to do Alchemagic. So that does help a lot with the deck's consistency. However, one drawback of this is that if you don't use this ability, you won't be able to Alchemagic at all. And this ability does have a Soul Blast cost tied to it. So if you end up in a position where you don't have any soul in order to pay this cost, you won't be able to Alchemagic at all. So that actually can backfire. We do have quite a few cards in the deck that focus on building up that soul in order to be sure that we don't end up in that situation. But that is something to keep in mind with this deck. However, it is a lot more consistent, letting you not only guarantee to have an order in your hand, but also potentially letting you recycle the same order every turn back from your drop into your hand to use the same skill repeatedly. So it definitely helps in mitigating the chances of the deck bricking and making the deck overall a lot more consistent. So that is our ride deck. Moving on to the main deck. First off, for the grade 3s, we do have our 3 additional copies of Grave Zorga, in SP of course, for our Persona ride purposes. Next up, we have 4 copies of Roaming Prison Dragon. So he has an auto ability that's active when he's in the drop zone. That says when you play a normal order, you may call this card to Rearguard Circle. And if you call this card, perform one of the following. But if it was Alchemagic, you can perform all of the following instead. So this unit gets power plus 10,000 until end of turn, and this unit gets critical plus 1 until end of turn. So again, still a very much vital card for the deck. You should be Alchemagicking every turn, which should be easier to do with Grave Zorga's consistency. So he's a free plus 1 to your board, and a 15k 2 crit base. He does have a 5k base to begin with, but with that power up, he can still become a pretty threatening rearguard. And of course, when you Alchemagic, Grave Zorga will give him another 5k on top of that, so he should be at a minimum of 20k 2 crits on his own, plus Persona Ride, plus any other power-ups, plus boost if you have something behind him. So he can definitely become a pretty threatening column and hit pretty big numbers, which is very important since this is still a 3 attack deck. So next up we have the first of our normal orders. We are running 2 copies of Clouded Miasma. So you can play this with a Counterblast 1, and it lets you choose a grade 3 or less card from your drop and call it to Rearguard Circle. And if this is part of Alchemagic, you choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets a continuous ability until end of turn that says all of your front row units get power plus 5,000. So this is one of the main orders that I use in the deck, one of the few that we are running multiples of, because I want to be able to be sure that we can get it, which we still have Shadow Cloak in order to dig stuff out of our deck. So you should always be able to have access to this card when you need it, and it lets you not only revive a unit from your drop, giving you a plus 1 to your board, but it also gives you yet another power-up skill to your Vanguard, which will stack with the one that Grave Zorga has naturally. So he will essentially be giving your entire front row an extra 10k. So if you play this combined with Grave Zorga's built-in skill, it will basically be the power gain that you would normally get from Grief, Despair, and Rejection, but you also get a revival on top of it. So this is definitely one of the key orders in the deck. A lot of times this is the one that I bounce back to my hand from drop every turn with Grave Zorga's Alchemagic skill. That way I can keep reusing this one and bind whatever I'm combining it with in order to get that power up every turn, as well as a revival. Which is especially nice since Grave Zorga no longer has the built-in revival skill that his original form had. So definitely one of the most important orders in the deck. So lastly, for the grade 3s, I am running 2 copies of the normal order Death Inviting Black Magic. So this card's play cost is a whopping Counterblast 4. but it has an ability that says the cost is reduced by Counterblast 1 for each card in your bind zone, and its effect lets you draw 2 cards. So again, this is another important order for the deck, which is why I'm running 2 of it. Letting you draw 2 cards is a very basic skill, but very, very useful. Now, as for the cost, since you'll be Alchemagicking, you will always have at least 1 card in your bind zone when you play this card. So it should be at a minimum of a Counterblast 3. We also have a grade 1 card in this deck that can reduce the Counterblast 1 further. So at that point, it would be a Counterblast 2 for a +2, which is pretty much the standard. So even if you use it on turn 3, it should end up being a pretty good value. And of course, if you use it later in the game as well, the later you use it, the more cards you're going to have bound. So the more and more its cost will be reduced. So on paper, it looks like it's kind of overcosted, but you can get that cost down to pretty cheap fairly easily. And that extra draw power is definitely very helpful. So that is all of our grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have our 4 copies of Shadow Cloak. So his auto ability says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle from hand, you search your deck for up to 1 order card and reveal it, and if your drop does not have a card with the same card name as that card, you discard the revealed card and shuffle your deck. So, absolutely vital skill to the deck, letting you search out any order you want and get it into your drop zone. And then since Grave Zorga lets you get any order out of your drop zone into your hand, the combination of those 2 cards effectively lets you access any order in your entire deck that you want whenever you want it. So, definitely very important in setting up the plays that you want at that exact moment. And then he also has a second auto ability that says when you play an order, you can Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. And if it was Alchemagic, you choose one of your other rear guards and you may return it to your hand. So, power up skill, as well as letting you bounce one of your units back to your hand. So that can be good if you revive like a trigger or a perfect guard or what have you from your drop with one of your order skills. Then you can bounce that unit back to your hand and potentially gain some more defensive options for later in the game. Now this is a Soul Blast cost, so you do want to be a little bit more mindful in this version of the deck of when you use this skill, and make sure you don't deplete your soul too much and not be able to pay for Zorga's Alchemagic cost the next turn. So be mindful of your soul count, but still a very useful ability in both helping your offense and getting units back to your hand for later use. So next up, we have 3 copies of Clipping Dragon of Soul Revolution. So his auto ability says at the end of your turn, if you Alchemagic an order and played it, or attacked a total of 5 or more times this turn, you put this unit into your soul and countercharge 1. So again, you're only attacking 3 times with this deck per turn, so you're not going to get the 5 attacks, but you should do Alchemagic every turn. So during the end phase, you can shove him into soul and countercharge. So he has a -1 to gain 2 resources. The soul, gaining the extra soul is more important with this deck, although the countercharge can be helpful too, especially if you use Death-Inviting Black Magic a lot. So this is a very important card in this deck, helping you restore those resources. Now a lot of the times he does end up just sitting on the back row doing nothing until the end phase, because we have more important things to have in our front row. But even in that situation, he is still important to have just to get those resources back. So next we have another one of our normal orders. We have 1 copy of Gather Upon Me, Ye Wandering Souls. So you can play this by discarding an order card from your hand, and it lets you choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets Drive +1 until end of turn. So pretty cool skill, giving you an extra drive check at the cost of discarding an order from your hand. Which, since you can use Grave Zorga skill to get that order back to your hand the next turn, that cost is definitely not as steep as it would be in the last version of Zorga that I showed off. So sometimes if I have it in my hand at the time, I actually like using this card on turn 2, which will allow me to get Twin Drive 1 turn sooner, and then whatever I discard for this card's cost, I can just add right back to my hand the next turn with Grave Zorga. So that can be an option to start in your order plays 1 turn sooner than you normally would, and it wouldn't really cost you any card advantage. So lastly, for the grade 2s, I have 1 copy of the normal order Tearful Malice. So you can play this by retiring 2 of your rearguards, and it allows you to draw a card, put this card into your soul, and countercharge 1. So this is another resource card, again very important in getting that extra soul, and in some cases the extra countercharge as well. You do have to retire 2 of your own rearguards in order to play this. Now, if you already have Roaming Prison Dragon out on your field, you can retire him for this cost and then just turn around and Superior Call him right back with his own skill. So that would effectively cut the cost for this card in half. And with the draw you get off of this card, making up for the second retire, it can almost mitigate the cost entirely. So again, just a very important option to have for another resource engine besides Clipping Dragon. So that is all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 3 copies of Rogue Headhunter. So he has a continuous ability that says if you played an order this turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000. So again, that should always be active, so he should be a 13k base when he's on Rearguard Circle. And then he has his auto ability that says when this unit's placed on Rearguard Circle, that next time you would Alchemagic an order and play it this turn, you reduce that cost by Counterblast 1. So this is the card I mentioned earlier that can further mitigate your Counterblast costs. So if you use this with Death Inviting Black Magic, that will get that cost down by 1 more Counterblast. So very important card. You do need to call this card before you play your order in order to get that cost reduced, obviously. So you will end up having to be required to call him from your hand, since all the things that would let you call him from your drop would be played after you already played the order, at which point his skill wouldn't help you any. However, if you want, you could use Shadowcloak's bounce ability to return him to your hand in order to repeat his skill next turn as well. So that is also another option you can keep in mind. So next I have 1 copy of Sleeve Tugging Bell. So her auto ability says when this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, you may put all of your cards from your bind zone into your drop, and if you do, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn for each card you put. So this is a good card for late game if you start running out of orders in your drop zone from where you've bound so many for your Alchemagic. You can call her and reset all those orders from your bind zone back into your drop, and also power up her in the process. So she is a 7k base, so she will come just shy of hitting magic numbers, unfortunately. But being able to recycle all those orders back into your drop so you can continue using Alchemagic in future turns can be very helpful. So next we have our Sentinels. So we have 3 copies of Planar Prevent Dragon. So just your standard Perfect Guard. And then of course the 1 copy of the Blitz Order Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So then we have our 1 copy of the normal order, In the Dim Darkness, the Frozen Resentment. So you can play this with a Soul Blast 1, and it lets you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, discard it, and shuffle your deck. Then choose a card from your drop with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard, and call it to Rearguard Circle. So another good revival skill. This card does cost a Soul Blast. It's the only order with a Soul Blast cost I am running in this deck. So again, be mindful of that soul count. But pretty good skill, letting you mill 1 from the top 3 of your deck to set up something that you want in your drop zone into your drop, including a potential target to revive off of this card. and then letting you revive another one onto your board. So, very useful skill, but do keep that cost in mind and sort of plan ahead. So then lastly for the grade 1s, we have one copy of our last normal order, Sweets That Become an Evil Dream. So you can play this with a Counterblast 1, and it lets you draw a card, look at the top card of your deck, and put it on the top of your deck or discard it. So pretty useful ability, another draw skill, so more draw power, always a good thing. And on top of the draw, you also get a scry, so you can check the top card of your deck, and if you find something like a trigger unit or something you want in your hand, then you can leave it on the top. Or if you find something like Roman Prison Dragon or an Order or what have you, you can go ahead and discard it and get it set up in your drop zone for later. So pretty useful ability, letting you not only gain some draw power, but also set up future plays. So that's all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 7 crit, 4 front, 4 heal, and 1 over. So first off, for the crit triggers, we have 3 copies of Abyss Temptation, so your vanilla crit. Additionally, we have 4 copies of Aspiring Maiden Alana. So crit with a skill, at the end of the battle it boosted, you can put it into your soul to choose one of your units, and it gets power plus 2,000 until end of turn. Another soul engine option for the deck, and of course you can revive this with one of your various revival skills, so you can still use it for guarding, and then get it back on your board in order to shove it into your soul as well. Next for the fronts, we have 4 copies of Frenzied Heiress. So front with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000, so your 20k shield front trigger. And then our heal is 4 copies of Elegy Pixie. So just the vanilla heal, as always. If you want to run any of the effect heals, feel free. And then lastly, our over trigger. Source Dragon, Deity of Blessings, Bless Favor. So his additional effect lets you draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets critical plus 1 until end of turn. All of your front row units get power plus 10,000, and if your damage zone has the same number of cards as your opponent's or more, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. So a crit, front, draw, and heal all rolled into one. Definitely a very powerful trigger. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And let's face Masaru this time. And we will be going second. Alright, so let's discard Sleeve Tugging Bell in order to ride Rancor Chain. And Dream Nibbling will let us draw. So then we can use Rancor Chain's ability to Soul Blast one and draw 2. And now we have to discard an order from our hand, so we'll drop Death Inviting Black Magic. And I think we are good, so we'll go ahead and attack. And we will let that through. And I'll let that one through too. Alright, so we'll discard one of these clipping dragons to ride Black Tear's Husk Dragon and use his ability to return our order back to our hand. So we'll go ahead and call Shadow Cloak and use his ability to send an order from our deck to the drop. So let's send... let's do Sweets That Become an Evil Dream. And I think I'm going to go ahead and play Gather Upon Me, Ye Wandering Souls. So I have to discard an order from my hand, so we will drop Death Inviting Black Magic. So now our Vanguard gets +1 drive, and we could use Shadow Cloak's ability, but we're not going to right now. So instead, we're just going to go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first, which has twin drive now. So then we can attack with Shadow Cloak. Alright, so we got him to 3. And now he's going to play Pandemonium Tactics to Soul Charge 4. So we'll let that one through. And we get a front trigger, nice. Alright, so that's 2 crits, so we need to block that. So we'll guard it with that crit, and that'll be 2 to pass. And he got no triggers, alright. And his last rear guard couldn't hit anything because of that front trigger. So we will discard Roaming Prison Dragon to ride Grave Zorga. Alright, so we will go ahead and use Grave Zorga's ability to Soul Blast. And we discard 1 from our hand, so we'll drop that other Roaming Prison. And now we can add an order from our drop back to our hand. So let's add Black Magic. And then from our hand, we will go ahead and play Clouded Miasma. And we will Alchemagic that with Sweets That Become an Evil Dream. So we have to counter blast 2. And now we can call 1 from our drop zone. So let's see, we will call Rancor Chain. And we will put him behind our Vanguard. And then we reveal a crit. So we will leave it on the top. So now we can revive Roaming Prison from our drop zone. Thanks to his own skill. So he gains 10k and a crit. And let's see, we'll go ahead and revive this other Roaming Prison as well. And then we can use Shadow Cloak's ability to actually bounce it back to our hand. And then we'll have some discard fodder next turn for our Perfect Guard. So I think we are good to go. So we will go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first. And we get our crit trigger, which we knew was coming. So we'll give that crit to the Vanguard and the power to Roaming Prison. Oh, and then we pull our over trigger. Oh, wow. Okay. So we're going to give that power to Shadow Cloak. And then we give the crit to our Vanguard, so this might actually finish him right here. Our front row gains 10, and we draw 1, and we heal 1. Ah, but he gets a heal trigger, which he does get. So he will survive this attack. But we got 2 more big ones coming his way. And he still has to block both of them because he's at 5. So we will attack with Shadow Cloak. And he does have a Perfect Guard. So then we'll attack with Roaming Prison Dragon for 45,002 crit. Oh, and he survived it. He had to use up a lot of his hand, though. But he still got his Persona right. And he's going to play Pandemonium Tactics again. So he's going to get the 15 cards in his soul. Which means he's going to get 5 attacks this turn. And all of our rear guards are going to end up getting sucked into our soul. So let's see, we will guard that with this crit. And let's see, we will... we'll let that one through. So he's gonna draw, gain 10k and a crit. Suck in all of our rear guards, and then he calls 2 rear guards from his soul. So this is 43,002 crit. So let's go ahead and perfect guard this one. And we'll drop that Roaming Prison to set him back up in our drop. Oh, and he gets a critical trigger as well. Well, on the bright side, we got plenty of soul now. We don't have to worry about that. Alright, so let's see, that's one crit. He'll get a soul charge if that hits, but it's fine. So we'll let that one through. And then he can put our back into a soul and get a counter charge. So this is 2 crits, so we definitely had to block this one. So let's see, we'll go ahead and just perfect guard that one as well. So we'll discard Black Magic. Alright, so now we can Persona Ride. So I'm going to go ahead and call Shadow Cloak from my hand yet again. And his ability will let us drop another order, so let's send Frozen. And then we will go ahead and use Grave Zorga's ability. So we will Soul Blast one. And discard one, so let's drop... we'll drop that other Black Magic that we drew into. So now we can add an order from our drop to our hand. So let's add Clouded Miasma. And then we will go ahead and play Clouded Miasma. And we will Alchemagic it with Death Inviting Black Magic. So we have to Counter Blast 3. But we can call one card from our drop, so we will Superior call Rogue Headhunter and put him over here. And then we get to draw 2. So that triggers Headhunter's ability, but it won't help us any since we already played our order this turn. So then we can revive Roaming Prison yet again. So he comes back and gets his 10k and a crit. So we'll go ahead and revive that other one, why not? And then use Shadow Cloak to Soul Blast. And we'll bounce that extra Roaming Prison to our hand. So I think we are good to go. So we will go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first. And he perfect guards again. And we get a heal trigger, which unfortunately we don't get, but we do get the power, so we'll give that to Roaming Prison. Oh, and then we'll get a front trigger too, nice. So that powers up our front row. So then we'll attack with Roaming Prison for a whopping 68,002 crit. And yep, he's got to lay it through. And we got him with that. So there you go. That was my Grave Zorga deck. Very fun deck. Definitely the more powerful of the 2 variants that I have built. But anyway, I will be back soon with more deck profiles. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.